All right, so as we assemble here, and I'm going to be introducing our panel in a second, I'm going to see if Dr. Tawney might want to come up and just acknowledge a couple elected officials that we have here. That gives you another 60 seconds, only 60 seconds to finish that conversation, have a seat, so we can get started. All right, Dr. Tawney.
This is what makes El Paso, right? We love to gather and to visit with one another because we don't see each other in our day-to-day often as a community. So again, I want to give a round of applause for that panel. Again, I agree with Elizabeth. That is a Titan panel that shines a light on a true story for our El Paso and our border region across Texas and beyond. So thank you to that panel. Let's give them a round of applause. A few things that I just wanted to point out that Alfredo mentioned that really resonated with me. He said that his mom sent him to El Paso and said that they loved El Paso so much because there were Hispanics in suits. One thing that we pride ourselves on this campus that I love is that we want our El Pasoans, our community, our children, our grandchildren to see themselves in careers that we offer on this campus. And I also echo that at UTEP. UTEP is doing a phenomenal job with training and educating the next generation of leaders in the next frontier, whether it be aerospace, engineering, all of those things. We're educating future healthcare leaders, nurses, physicians, dentists, researchers. And again, that did not look this way 13, 14 years ago because our students could not see themselves in those types of healthcare professions. And today they can because we have this campus here and we have pipeline programs with our partners. I see Carrie Moe Dr. Moe is here, EPCC with our nursing pipeline program, as well as UTEP and a lot of our partnerships now with our MedFuture pipeline to our medical school. So again, it's a great day to be in El Paso. It's a great day to be part of our community. And a lot of this would not be possible without community leaders. So I want to recognize from District 6, our City Council member, Art Fierro. Can you please stand up? Thank you, Art, for being here. And at this campus and actually Medical Centers of America, as well as El Paso Children's Hospital, UMC, all of the great things that go on in 79905, which we love our neighborhood, would not be possible again without a champion who continues to serve. Congresswoman Escobar, she is not here, but we have Emily Loya, who's also a true friend to our campus and community. Thank you. I'll turn it over to the next panel. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, so our next conversation is focused on business and economic development. El Paso touts its strategic location on the border, and its bilingual and bicultural workforce is key to economic growth. How is the El Paso economy unique to the state, and what are the lessons that can be applied elsewhere? Our panel today includes Mayra G. Maldonado, Executive Director of UTEP Hunt Institute for Global Competitiveness, where she leads the Institute's work on binational, comparative, commercial, and financial analysis. Andrea Hutchins, President and CEO of the El Paso Chamber of Commerce, previously the Chief Operating Officer at Thomas P. Miller & Associates, an education, economic, and workforce development consulting firm. John Barela, CEO of Borderplex Alliance, a privately funded economic development and policy organization representing the Borderplex region, and he previously served as New Mexico's Economic Development Cabinet Secretary. And Cindy Ramos Davidson, CEO of the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and currently serves on the board of directors of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, where she provides input on regional economic conditions. Our panel is moderated by Ayan Mitra, Senior Managing Editor for the Tribune, and I turn the program over to my colleague, Ayan.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And thank you all for being here. This is an exciting panel to be a part of, and we're thrilled to get going here. In the previous panel this morning, you heard talks about, telling better stories, being able to tell our own stories. And I think this is an opportunity where we're going to be able to talk about some success stories here in El Paso and the broader El Paso region. And so with that as kind of the backdrop, the first panel was called The Significance of El Paso to Texas. I think I would like to start off with kind of a conversation about the significance of El Paso to the Texas economy. And maybe, Mayra, I'll start with you just to talk about that. And what is, expand on kind of the work that you're doing as well as how important El Paso is broadly.
Hi, thank you, Ian. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for the invitation to discuss the distinctive attributes of El Paso in the Texas economy. It's always an honor to share the platform with all of you, John, Cindy, and Andrea Hutchins, who are great advocates and promoters of our region. So and thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you for those who are watching us online. What is the contribution of El Paso to the Texas economy? I'll start by saying that among the southern border counties, El Paso County holds the largest GDP with $43.1 billion. We also hold the largest population among these border counties with around 866,000 inhabitants. The second trait that I'd like to share is that with respect to trade, we rank second to overall trade. We also rank second with respect to advanced manufacturing trade. And breaking news, along the US-Mexico border, we have the port of entry, Isleta Port of Entry, which ranks first with respect to healthcare industry trade along the US-Mexico border. We also have a military base, the largest division-based task force in the U.S. Army, Fort Bliss, which contributes to the state economy with around $22 billion. And we also have great universities. UTEP holds the R1 Research One top-tier university, which serves Hispanic communities. We also have El Paso Community College. We have Texas Tech as well. So all of these are great characteristics that our economy has for Texas.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to pass over to Cindy and Andrea about just also the work that you're doing in terms of like, what the story that you're able to tell that's attracting, business and investment to this region.
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing us to be here. This is a real privilege to be here with these leaders always, and thank you to Texas Tribune for allowing us that opportunity. We always like to say that Texas starts in El Paso, not the other way. You have to go that way to start in El Paso. We have a rich tapestry of unbelievable businesses in our community. Because we are so far away from so many other places, they are extremely resilient. They are very deep-rooted in their tradition, but being deep-rooted in their tradition as businesses does not mean stagnation. It definitely means innovation and opportunity to pull resources wherever they can. One of the programs that we're very proud of that we're doing is we have an alliance with NASA, believe it or not, and the Houston Partnership and Clear Lake Houston area. And NASA, which is our SATOP program, is our Space Alliance Technology Opportunity Program, where we will take a small business, any type of business that's stuck on something, that's innovating something. They can apply to our office through the program and be able to be assigned an engineer from NASA, from KBR, or one of the other partners they have to help them fix the problem and get unstuck and be able to get that product to commercialization. And that's here in El Paso, Texas. So that's one of the programs we're very proud of. One of the other programs we're very proud of is we have a small business who got started during COVID. And I love her saying where she says, flavors have no borders. That is so true here in El Paso. She has a restaurant that she opened in the El Paso airport. During COVID, she started her company, and it's Grandma's Cheeky's Bakery, and she is serving everyone who comes through our El Paso airport. So when people say El Paso doesn't have businesses who can compete, not only can they compete, but they can certainly go a very long way.
Andrea, like in your work, what are you hearing, and what is the story that's resonating as you're kind of talking with businesses and they're coming here or even expanding here?
So echoing kind of what Cindy had just said, well, first of all, thank you again to the Texas Tribune for allowing us to come here and brag a little bit about the amazing things that are happening in El Paso. I think introspectively, when we're in economic development, sometimes we talk about how we would like things to be versus recognizing all of the great things that are here. And certainly, as Cindy and Maida have already pointed out, there is a lot. So when we look at our businesses here in the El Paso region and what they are doing that is different, Cindy kind of hit on some of the things with innovation and grit. But truly, because of our economic makeup and our cultural makeup here, we are blessed to have a number of unique businesses who are startups from the ground up. We have got some major success stories who have found ways to not only bridge the divide between El Paso and Juarez, but they have taken their businesses international. We've got companies that are operating now in multiple countries that are doing advanced manufacturing that started right here in El Paso, all the way to mom and pop type restaurants who are now on the list of some of the best restaurants in all of Texas. So when we talk about our flavor, certainly there's a lot that Texas can learn from El Paso. But because of the geographic isolation of our region, we really have had to rely on each other. So I want to point out, this morning I was just at the Bridge Accelerator kickoff, and they were talking about, innovation and supply chain. And so I think that through our partnerships as a community, we have done a really good job of building bridges between companies. We have looked introspectively at what we could do as far as, supporting the companies that we have here locally and ensuring that they not only know one another, but they have the opportunity to connect with one another. Programs like what Cindy's talking about, to the Bridge Accelerator that happened this morning, to the Build Back Better program that is happening right now through UTEP. El Paso is just really unique in that it is adept at building bridges.
Thank you. John, in this idea of building bridges, the Borderplex Alliance is at the heart of that in terms of from a broader regional standpoint too. This is not just about El Paso, it's about New Mexico, it's about Mexico. Can you talk about the work that your organization's doing and kind of how that collaborative approach has really benefited not just El Paso, but the surrounding region?
Well, I too want to join our panelists, a very esteemed group of people from our region, and thank you to the Texas Tribune for hosting this wonderful event. So it's a privilege to be here with everybody today. I'm proud to be a multi-generational resident of the Borderplex region. My family roots go back a long ways here. And to see the evolution, even when I was in high school, of where we are now is nothing but short of phenomenal. As was mentioned in the introduction, the Borderplex Alliance is unique. We're the only economic development and policy organization that represents 3 states, 2 countries. And we recognize the paramount importance that we are one region despite the geographic and political jurisdictional differences that we have. And we recognize that as a strength, very much a strength, whereas people outside this region may view it as a weakness. It's an absolute strength. One region of 2.7 million people that's tied together economically, culturally, historically, with one common future for economic growth. A few statistics that people might be surprised about, those who are watching online. El Paso is not only important to the Texas economy, it's absolutely vital to the national economy. 1/5 of the trade that comes into the United States from Mexico, whether it be in medical devices, whether it be in automotive trade, comes through our ports of entry from Santa Teresa, even though that's in New Mexico, it's part of our region, all the way down to Tornillo. 1/5 of the trade comes through our ports of entry. Secondly, our region now is the 5th largest manufacturing hub in North America. Almost 350,000 residents here in the Borderplex region are involved in advanced manufacturing, high-end consumer electronics, again, medical devices, automotive. This is critical to our quality of life, not only in our region, but throughout Texas and throughout our country. So we're absolutely vital. Our organization is in many ways a leading indicator in where our region will be going. We are industrial recruiters. That's part of our job. And we right now are as busy as we've ever been in terms of the sheer volume of projects that we are responding to. People have discovered our region, and that's a good thing. Our growth is very, very well positioned for future growth. And what I can say, and my final comment, is this: we've all heard, and it's an overused term, everybody's talking about reshoring, nearshoring, onshoring, all of those things. There's also intrashoring that I've developed because companies are looking to get out of California and move somewhere else. But we're seeing an incredible volume of companies looking to expand or relocate out of China, out of Asia, out of now Europe. because of the geopolitical issues that are existing and the uncertainty that is existing in certain parts of the world. And they're finding, I always say this, capital always seeks its course of least resistance, just like water does, and always seeks a safe harbor. Well, we're the safe harbor. And people are beginning to realize that our region is the safe harbor. One last thing. What distinguishes El Paso and our region from other parts, perhaps, of the country is that we have a phenomenal workforce, a young workforce, a trained and trainable workforce, 150,000 students in post-secondary education. Yes, in Juarez too, in New Mexico State, UTEP, and other institutions of higher learning. But that is an incredibly bright future for us. And Bob and I always get together. Bob Moore and I get together occasionally, and we talk about statistics because we're just political and policy wonks, and we always trade information. Thank you, Bob, for the stuff that you bring to me. But I really believe that that we're on a very, very bright future, and that's not going to stop, in my opinion, for the next 12 to 24 months in terms of the industrial growth that we're seeing.
Yeah, thank you. So, I think we've touched a little bit on this, but I do want to kind of this is our chance to kind of, directly address some misunderstandings that maybe, whether it's potential businesses relocating here or just general kind of misunderstandings about the region that we can address here today, and, that you're hearing, in your work. And what are some common things that you hear about things that you'd love to make sure people understand better about this region as, a prospective place to kind of move your business or to expand your business? And this question is for the panel, but I'll start maybe with you, Andrea, if you want to just kind of start us off.
Sure. So I actually was, I had the opportunity yesterday to have an op-ed placed in Fortune magazine. And one of the things that I talked about was the fact that, nationally, there's all of this attention on immigration. El Paso is at the forefront in many people's eyes of, what is happening here across the country with illegal immigration, asylum seekers. There's different vernacular for them, depending on which group and which state it is that you're talking to. But, certainly even here in the state of Texas, there is a lot of controversy around the border right now. And so that controversy is often why El Paso is in the news. It's not because of all of the great things that John just mentioned related to advanced manufacturing and the growth here in our region. And really, it should be. When we're talking about inflation, when we are talking about the cost of goods, when we're talking about putting those 150,000 students that John just mentioned to work across the United States, it's an issue. And so when we look at the economic opportunity here in El Paso, it's just continuing to grow. And rather than taking the opportunity to harness that growth nationwide, certainly the Biden administration has taken a look at El Paso. We just recently won the Build Back Better initiative a couple of years ago. We're a finalist now for the Recompete initiative. One of the things that we have been able to do is put together a core group of people in our region who are going after federal funding. And at the federal government level, they are starting to see the opportunities that we have here as a region. It would be fantastic if we could continue to get the rest of the country to recognize that same opportunity. And rather than having the news focus on a small group of people, getting that kind of news bite, if you will, with, video of people rushing the border, certainly maybe we could take a look at some of those amazing advanced manufacturing opportunities. We've got kids that are coming over from Mexico to go to school at UTEP who are finding ways to create water on the moon, right? So we have Mexican citizens going to school at UTEP, creating water to, replicate what it would be to create water on the moon. I mean, to me, that is just an amazing feat. And the fact that that's happening here on a daily basis, but is not on the news is disheartening, and something that I hope that certainly the rest of the country will start paying attention to.
Cindy, please.
Sure. I just wanted to say, just as a point of reference, economic viability in this country starts here in El Paso, Texas. We are 81% Hispanic. There are 5 million Hispanic businesses nationwide. We're an $800 billion economic output in this country, and you're 81% Hispanic in El Paso, Texas. Our lives are intertwined. Our cultures are intertwined. We're deep-rooted in tradition. We have a tapestry of different cultures. We're where it's at when you're looking at growing business and coming to our marketplace. And what I would like everyone out there who's watching television, El Paso is not what you see on TV. El Paso is what you see in this audience and on this stage, and we invite you to come to our wonderful community so that we can take you hand by hand and show you exactly who we are, what we do, and how we do it. We're doctors and lawyers and business owners and CEOs and politicians and scientists. We're all over the place, and we're not what you see on TV. The deep-rootedness of economic viability is right here where Texas starts, is in El Paso, Texas.
I'd like to add that some of the topics that you also see in the media, in the news about El Paso is that it is a dangerous city. We are actually the 10th safest city in the U.S. So yes, you have to come here. The other piece is that we work collaboratively, and that's attested by the Recompete program, by the BBBR challenge by Debre that El Paso Chamber of Commerce is pursuing. So we are working together more than ever to pursue great initiatives for El Paso, and I think that's very unique from our community.
Well, on Tuesday, I was in Washington, D.C., and I was honored to co-host an event, our organization, with the Textile Association of America, promoting a bipartisan piece of legislation called the Americas Act that would essentially expand the USMCA. That's a separate subject. But I led my comments. It was a good crowd, a good bipartisan crowd of individuals from Washington, most of whom, almost all of whom had never been to El Paso. I started my comments out by simply saying this: the border is not broken. Maybe our immigration system is, but the border is not broken. And it always drives me crazy when you see these reports that come out. We see them on national news all the time. And there's one thing I want to leave with the individuals who've never been here, maybe joining us online, is that we are not, as Maida said, a violent, dangerous frontier. Not at all. And to take Maida's statistic one step further, of cities that are 500,000 and above, we're the second safest city based on overall crime rate in America. Only Honolulu is safer, apparently. But we're number 2. And Honolulu's nowhere near the border. So I have to tell you that all of us who grew up here understand that intuitively. Those who didn't grow up here and see the news also have a view of us that is not exactly accurate, and I get it. But what I don't get is when we lose projects. The sad reality is we lost a project in April of last year during our first migrant surge. It was a tremendous project, aviation related, would have gone in the El Paso airport. The board of directors overruled a site decision that was recommended by a site selection team. And the reason that the board cited for that overruling of that decision by the committee was that El Paso seemed to be too dangerous and chaotic. I did my best. We all did our best in our organization to salvage it. We offered to fly people here to see the streets. We offered to go there and visit. We even took a video of the streets of El Paso downtown, sent it to the board, to no avail. But those are the things that we were working on. So despite our incredible growth, 13 million square feet at least that we know of new industrial space that's going up, on and on, I can cite a whole bunch of great statistics. I know we're not optimizing our potential because of the unfortunate national attention that comes our way. One last thing. Be careful. In about 18 months to 20 months, we will be having the 6-year review of the USMCA. We're on it. We're working it. I'm worried a little bit about the national policies and politics that would maybe attack the USMCA and its viability. I'm starting to see cracks developing. I hope it doesn't happen, but we're on it. The USMCA is absolutely vital to our, not only Texas's future, our future, but the future of our continent. So keep that in mind as we move forward. USMCA, U.S.-Canada-Mexico Agreement, that's NAFTA 2.0, that's North American Free Trade Agreement. That was the successor to NAFTA. And in Mexico, it's known as TEMEC, so T-E-M-E-C.
You know, a big theme that's already kind of come up through this conversation is just the idea of partnership and collaboration. And it seems like it has been kind of through all of your work across the panel. It seems vital to kind of the work that you do, and as you know, in producing the results that we're talking about today. You know, Andrea, I'd like to start with you on this question, but I think everyone can probably contribute an answer to this. It's just more, I know that the consortium that the chamber is part of. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how you're innovating, and like how vital that is to the results that you're seeing in your work?
Sure. So I talked a little bit about the Biden administration, but a lot of the federal grants that we are applying for, they want to see success. They want to see measurable outcomes, and they want to see that this group has been able to produce in the past. And so back in 2020, a group got together that includes UTEP, the City of El Paso, the El Paso Chamber of Commerce, and a number of other entities, including every one of them that's up here on this stage. And so, I think that, again, in Washington, D.C., we are starting to be noticed for the good work that we are doing collectively together. We are being noticed in Austin for the same thing. On a regular basis, when people come to us and say, so many other communities can't get their act together, so many other communities can't figure out who they want to be when they grow up, certainly as a region, we have had a number of successes with coming together and kind of taking advantage of each one of us and what we do best, if you will. So everybody up here on the stage touches a little bit of similar and some similar type activities in economic development, but we all kind of have our strength. And so I think when it comes to some of the things that Cindy pointed out with the small businesses and her small business development center for women, and some of the other things that she does for veterans, the chamber does a pretty good job of, referring people to her, right? So I think as a region, because we do have limited resources, we have managed to come together and say, instead of duplicating efforts, how can we ensure that our community is getting the most out of the resources that we do have? And I think that is through partnerships. So again, when we kind of look at the future of El Paso and where we are going to be going, I think that across the nation, we are not only kind of a beacon of what partnerships look like, but I think that you're going to continue to see the partnerships that we have here growing.
I just wanted to reiterate, there are over 35 other resource organizations in El Paso. We're only a handful of the ones in our community. So, we would be here for 2 weeks talking about all the wonderful things we're doing. But thank you for that opportunity to talk about our certification that we do. We're the only one of 4 in the country that will certify women to do business with the federal government. There are 4 nationwide. We're one of them here in town. We're the only Hispanic chamber in the country to house and operate a women's business center, specifically for the growing rate of women in business. We are also state hub certifiers to be able to get businesses to certify and do work with the state of Texas. There are 11 of them, and we're one of them. The reason we went after those is because we know our businesses in our market could compete just like anybody else, but they need to have a little bit of extra help and guidance along the way. I think the best part of this panel is we do have a wonderful collaboration. I know John and I talk on a regular basis, and Maida and I do, and Andrea and I do when we can, if we're not too busy running around chasing membership and dollars and all those other kinds of things. But it's really a great partnership in our community in terms of collaboration, and I think that does not get out well enough in the world about who we are and what we're doing. I think it's important that we are our own worst enemies sometimes. We have to be the ones to tout our success and what we're doing as a community, and I really do thank the Texas Tribune for taking the risk and the chance and out of the box to have us have an opportunity to sell ourselves to the world, so that people know that Texas, again, really does start in El Paso.
Yeah, one element too I like to approach, maybe a little different angle, is the collaboration, yes, with business organizations and all of that, but it's also important that we have a collaboration with our political leadership. And Congressman Escobar has done a wonderful job. I have to tell you, our state senator, Cesar Blanco, does an incredible job in a bipartisan manner. He works diligently and hard to represent this area, and he's on board with what we do, and just great leadership from Senator Blanco. We're lucky to have him in the state Senate. Our legislative delegation, tremendous advocates of what we do, as well as our Commissioner's Court, our city government leadership. We have Representative Fierro here. As was mentioned, they have always been steadfast supporters of of economic incentives that are absolutely vital in our world. And I have to tell you, all of them have been incredibly supportive. So yes, you need the business leadership, but you have to have the local political leadership as well. So from the federal representative, Senator Blanco, certainly our city and county leaders have done an amazing job to help us in that endeavor. It's vital. If you don't have that, you're missing a big portion of the collaborative effort.
And I'd like to mention an initiative that is being led by the City of El Paso, which is called the BOSS, the Business One Stop Shop program. And it's great for small businesses and micro businesses, which are ultimately the engine of our economy. They are centralizing in on one place all of the technical assistance providers, and all of us here, by the way, are helping them. The Hunt Institute is helping us, data partner, and we are having great results and about the profile of these businesses here. So it's a great step to help these businesses grow. And the other piece I'd like to mention is the collaboration is important here. It's phenomenal at the local level, but we also work with New Mexico and with Ciudad Juarez and Mexico overall. I think that being here just on the edge, it's a necessary condition for the betterment of our region.
Yeah, that's a really important point that I think goes back to some misunderstandings about how everyone works together. Could you just talk a little bit more about like working with, in particularly with Ciudad Juarez and just that work and how there are misunderstandings about how that works?
Of course, there's as of now there is the nearshoring momentum, right? There is no evidence of the foreign direct investment in Mexico growing. However, we do see, as John was saying, a significant increase in Asian companies getting into Mexico, and that's why the collaboration not only with maquiladoras or businesses comes like what's happening, how could we improve those conditions for them, but there are many businesses that cross their commodities on a daily basis, that they have offices in Juarez, they have offices here, maybe in Chihuahua. So for us, it's important not only to have partnerships with the government in Mexico, but also with these academic entities and businesses to get to know how to help them.
So, this is the magic wand segment of the conversation here, and like the magic wand is like related to the state and federal governments. And this question is just kind of, in looking to build on the momentum that we've been talking about, that looking at the state and federal levels, like what are the things that if you had your magic wand, or just things that you're looking for on the state and federal levels to kind of either help support what we're already doing here or help us build in the future? And so this question is for the full panel because everyone gets a magic wand for this question. But, maybe Cindy, we'll start with you just to, what you're kind of watching for and hoping for.
My magic wand is state and federal government, quit doing your policy through an ivory tower. Come out of the towers, come into the market, get down to the ground floor with us, and really see firsthand the beauty and the magic and the tapestry of the culture of El Paso. I tell people we really are the jewel on the Rio Grande, but you don't know that and you won't understand it till you actually come out and see it and interconnect with what we're doing here.
John, I'll ask you to go next. Although you kind of highlight some of this.
I would need multiple magic wands so to solve some of these issues. Look, if I had one magic wand, and yes, it would take magic these days to do it, is to come up with a truly comprehensive immigration reform package that would be signed into law by the president. It is incredibly frustrating for me to see that even certain elements, which 70% or so of the people in the United States support, providing a pathway to citizenship for our DACA. I used to call them DACA kids. These are full-blown adults now. I mean, come on, can we at least agree to get them a pathway to citizenship? I mean, to me, that's simple. We need their energy, we need their talent, we need their education to continue to promote our economy, not only locally throughout Texas, but throughout our country. These are hardworking adults now that need to finally be, their status needs to be normalized, period. Can we at least get that done? Yes, there's got to be an element of border security, absolutely. There's no doubt about it, but it's so frustrating that to see the vitriol that exists in Washington and the lack of support for any kind of logical and pragmatic approach to getting this done. I know the prior panel touched upon it, so I don't want to repeat, but it absolutely is vital to economic growth and to our future, not only in our region, but throughout our hemisphere, in our continent, our hemisphere, to make sure we get our arms around what is going on. And the United States is not, I'm sorry, the federal government, I hate to say this, and I'm going to be blunt about this, the federal government has not stepped up its responsibility in making sure that we take a lead as a country in being that beacon for a humane, productive gateway for people who want to work in our country, who want to contribute to our country. Instead, we're left with this haphazard system that doesn't help anyone. It certainly doesn't help our region, as I alluded to in my earlier comments. So yeah, that would be my magic wand. And I think it would take a magician again to get it done these days. So, I hope we can get it done at some point.
Okay, so I am going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to have two magic wands. I'm going to have one with my left and one with my right. So on my left hand, I'm a military spouse. So my husband's active duty military. And the first time that we moved here in 2017, immediately fell in love with the region. And, something that Judge Samaniego says often, whether you like it or not, is to know us is to love us. And I will tell you, I don't know a single military family that leaves this community having not absolutely fallen in love with it. And I wish that folks could see that side of El Paso who maybe only get to see it on TV. Okay, right hand magic wand. So kind of, I guess maybe talking a little bit about what John's mentioned, I think that there's some real opportunities at the border to make it both more secure and more efficient. There are other countries, frankly, war-torn countries, that have a more efficient border than we do because they have embraced technology. So when we look at, building walls or building bridges, either way, we're investing in the border. And I think it would be fantastic if we would take a page, and I hate to say this, out of California's book. There's one thing I think that they're doing right. At the border in San Diego, they have made significant investments in technology at the border because they see that as an economic driver for their region. I think that in Texas, having the largest land border in the country, we have a real opportunity to continue to not only make the country more secure, but frankly, more efficient. So if we were to have a magic wand and all the money that was out there that was necessary, we would have a very secure border, which we all can agree on that we need, but also a technologically efficient border where goods and people could both move through more efficiently, more timely. Maida always talks about how much a 10-minute delay at the border costs. It's not insignificant. It does impact the entire country. And I really wish that after we made that significant investment on the border, we could have a whole media day and we could get everyone to come here to El Paso and see why it is to know us is to love us.
I love it how we further further the endeavors of each other. Thank you, Andrea. I was going to speak about it, but if I would have the magic wand, I think that I would ask for acknowledging the significance of our economy to the nation. And how would I do that? First of all, it's on us. We have to make our case. I think that we are partnering together here at the local level, and that's great. We have to have a stronger voice. Nobody else is going to advocate for our region. The second thing is that, yes, the Hunt Institute conducted a research study to analyze how a 10-minute reduction in border wait times impact not only our community, but the overall U.S. And we found out that, for example, 70% of all the commodities that go through here stay here in Texas. So that's part of the significance that we have for the state, for the nation, and acknowledging that it's the magic that I like to see. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We've got a couple more questions that we'll do for the moderate Q&A, but we definitely want to make time for audience questions. So if you have questions, please get ready. We'll be going to you in a few minutes. But I wanted to come back to workforce because that was something that we talked about earlier. And I guess this question is for the group, but John, maybe starting with you because you were talking about it earlier, but just the aspect of what are we doing now here that is helping, sustain our workforce and thinking for the future workforce, what is being done or what needs to be done to kind of prepare the workforce for the jobs of tomorrow?
Well, to start my comments, and maybe preface my remarks by saying that when we host companies and when we respond to a request for information from companies looking to expand or relocate, once they get past the value proposition of being in our area, the number one question that they want to know about is, do you have a trained or trainable workforce? In many respects, this has now become as important or more important than literally the bottom line for a company. You have to still be competitive. Your city, your county, your state has to be competitive from a business standpoint. But if you do not and you cannot demonstrate that you have a trained or trainable workforce, you're not going to win a project. And that is a strength that we have, as I've mentioned before. We have a young area in terms of demographics. It's getting better at educating our folks. So what are our advantages and what are we doing? Part of our job too at the Borderplex Alliance, and we're going through every 5 years, we come up with a strategic plan, and Natalie Littlefield, who heads our Office of Strategic Development at the Borderplex, is undergoing this 5-year process of this strategic planning for our region, including New Mexico, Juarez, and Texas. A cornerstone of that is, in fact, workforce and what we need to be doing for preparing our students for jobs of the future. And so she has a number of stakeholders that she involves, and we come up with planning on identifying, part of our job is identifying what kind of skill sets we need to present to companies. And our success has been very good in the last few years in terms of demonstrating that. For people who are online, and we know this all intuitively here, I mentioned before, and it really needs reiterating, 150,000 students in our region in post-secondary education. People are surprised when they come to visit that they think of one institution, maybe a UTEP, and that's great. They do a fantastic job. Dr. Wilson's done an amazing job leading that institution. But then we start adding up all of the other colleges that are in the area, New Mexico State, UACJ, others, and the thing that they realize is that this is the equivalent of being somewhere in a major city in the United States. Chicago, LA, the numbers aren't quite there, but they're astounding to people that come here. So you have to illustrate that. And they do an incredible job, all those institutions, training for STEM fields. But the thing that blows everyone away is that most of the students that we produce are bilingual. What an incredible advantage that is in our world from a variety of standpoints. And when you can demonstrate and quantify that, it's a game changer when people come to visit us. And we win them over more often than not. And we're just really excited about the future, and we'll continue that collaboration with our institutions of higher learning. And so we're thrilled about the possibilities that might exist in just a great, productive workforce. There are analytics that suggest that. There's anecdotal evidence that suggests that. But when best evidence is when companies come here and then they expand. And we're having a whole lot of success with companies that get here. They kind of start with maybe 100, 200 employees. And I can give example after example after example, Schneider Electric being our poster child on that, of how they got here and they've continued to expand over time because they love the workforce here. And it's phenomenal what we see.
I just wanted to say I have a young lady in my office who is getting ready to have a celebration to get her American citizenship. And I get teary-eyed when I hear her story because she worked really hard to get that. She went to college, not only got a bachelor's degree, got a master's degree, and she's working with us. But she started because of her mom. And her mother told her she wanted her to have a better life so that she wouldn't have to clean houses and iron clothes, and that the way to do it was America. America was the way to do it. And to come to El Paso to do that is what she did. She is getting ready to have the celebration in a couple of weeks. We're going to have a big pachanga for her when she gets naturalized, because we know some of the questions they ask, I'm not even sure I could ask them today. And I'm like second generation American. But I have to tell you, our workforce is unbelievable. And the stories are real. And they go on and on and on. And we want the world, if you're watching, to come to El Paso and see the magic of what's going on in El Paso, Texas.
If I could also add, sorry, real quick, Maida, on the workforce front, you had mentioned at the beginning that I was doing work for a workforce and education consulting firm before I came here to El Paso, and we did work all across the country from Wisconsin, Iowa to Maine, and especially those northern and Midwestern states. I can tell you that they are painfully short on people. A lot of states have had 13, actually, according to the last census, have had a population decline. And certainly there are some places in Texas that have seen population decline. It's not all boom. And so, when we look at the opportunities that we have here in El Paso, we have the workforce that most of the rest of the country would love to have. Now, the beauty of having that workforce, many of them are, as John already mentioned, really talented and dedicated individuals who have the opportunity to just have a little bit of training that would make them qualified for some amazing jobs. So for those companies that have seen that opportunity here in the community, I do want to commend both the city, the county, and Workforce Solutions Borderplex for really providing training dollars and training opportunities to those companies that want to expand, but also to those individuals who kind of fit that mold, if you will. EPCC has not sat around saying, we're just going to wait for the companies to come to us to find out what we need to be educating people in. They have created programs and they've gone out and talked to business to find out, where the growing trends are in our community. And so I think looking at those adult pieces of our workforce, and not just the young folks. I mean, certainly the young folks are the future, but there's a lot of people right now who are capable of doing some amazing work and capable of bringing up the living wage in our community. So we need to continue to see that investment in our workforce. And I'm really hopeful that we make that finalist recompete package a reality. So.
We have been analyzing a cohort of 8th grader students here in El Paso, and what we found is that the enrollment rate to higher education is higher than Texas and that of other border counties. So I think that's impressive. And we have, universities such as UTEP, which is the only R1 university on the southern border counties in Texas. We also have El Paso Community College, but we also have, as John was mentioning, UACJ, NMSU, and here where we are sitting at Texas Tech, this is the major medical school here also along the border counties in Texas. So all in that, in conjunction with other entities that are providing certification programs and training programs such as Pioneers 21, Workforce Development, STT, and others that I would spend here all night talking about them. I think that makes a strong workforce for our region and for the nation.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple of questions, Matt.
Yeah, and just to encourage folks here in person who have questions, please join us up here. We certainly have a few. And you can also ask your questions online at texastribune.org/ask. We do have one that has just come in that I'll ask. A speaker on the previous panel stated that the average wage in El Paso is 62% of the state and national average. What kind of influence or facilitation can the business community bring to bear on El Paso's economy to enable smaller businesses to pay a living wage?
Let me take that one. This is where Bob and I always learn from one another, and we got together not long ago to discuss this very issue. And so, yes, the statistics I'm not going to dispute, about 62% lower the wages. But two critical things to keep in mind. Number one is that just last week, there was yet a second story that came out in national news media that ranked El Paso as the second most affordable city in which to live. So everything's relative, right? I mean, if you can still, yes, our housing prices have increased just like everybody else's, but they have not accelerated as quickly. Our housing costs have not accelerated as quickly as other parts of the country. There's second point. When I started this job 8 short years ago, the the median wage here in El Paso, I'll never forget this, easy number to remember, was $14.14. Today, we're well above $20, something like $26. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's getting close to the higher 20s. Before the pandemic, El Paso County was among the leaders in the nation in wage growth. Is there work to be done? Of course, that's what our job is, right? To try to make sure we're attracting these great paying jobs, and we're going to continue doing that. But the flip side of that number, the 62% of the average median wage, or whatever the average wage was stated to be, is still very much, the relativity is still very much valid. We're still a great place and an affordable place to raise families, to raise your kids, and to go about your American dream of owning a home if that's what you want. So, we have a very vibrant, healthy economy, including our wage growth.
My name is Michael Brain. I'm a proud Texas realtor. I appreciate the comments on housing here. The question I have is especially when we start talking about workforce housing, we just got a report out of Congresswoman's Veronica Espar's district. We'll take a look at the district here. 39% of our population are renters. The statistics will show that at minimum wage, the typical renter for a 2-bedroom apartment has to work 104 hours a month out of what, 160 hours. That's a huge percentage just to pay the rent. That's not talking about utilities, food, and what have you. When we talk about workforce development, what part does housing play in the decision for people to move here to the El Paso area, and what kind of programs can we see that will address this crisis?
Yeah, that's a great question. The average housing cost in El Paso is far below what it is in our typically competitive cities. Let me just give a background. The typical is that it's always the same cities, it seems, when it comes down to us making a finalist list. It's Phoenix, it's the I-35 corridor in Texas, it's Oklahoma City sometimes Tucson, and very often now cities in the southeastern part of the U.S. We're seeing trends in that direction. That being said, our average housing cost here in El Paso, the average sales cost, is still well below $300,000, and that positions us well with competitive cities. To more directly answer the question, the key thing that we need to continue to work on is making sure that we have these rises in the average and median income for families here. That's critical. Our housing stock, as you know, is affected sometimes by interest rates. So there's been a little bit of pullback on what we've seen in terms of not only here but nationally in terms of housing starts. It's not anything unique here, but we still have a very healthy mix of housing. You get into the philosophy of how you subsidize affordable apartments and affordable rents. That's left for people that are experts in that. But what we are seeing, no doubt, and again, to summarize answering your question, is that it's increasingly becoming an important one for businesses. Can you provide affordable housing stock? And keep in mind, they typically ask the question, do you have these houses that are for sale? What's your for sale housing stock? Because typically their workers are being paid very, very good wages, and many of them choose not to rent. Some of them do, but mostly they can afford the rents that are here and the typical, I'm talking about the companies that we recruit and the wages that are being paid. I'm not talking about minimum wage individuals, because we don't recruit companies that pay minimum wage at all. We have certain parameters, and one of them is that we really target companies that pay the average median wage or above. especially if they want to apply for incentives. So.
If I could add to that too, sorry. So, the Congresswoman's district represents a fairly developed district. So there is a number of, aged housing stock in her district. There's also new housing stock, but certainly there's not a great deal of vacant land. So as is the case with any metropolitan area, there is always a accordion effect that happens with the housing stock. And fortunately for us, we have a lot of land outside of the community, which makes investment in the county that much more reasonable for a lot of people. And so we're experiencing just what any other major metropolitan area that's growing is experiencing. And that is, people have a tendency to leave older housing stock. They move into new housing stock when they are, young families. And then that accordion effect happens where they move back into the older housing stock. So we're seeing that in several areas outside of downtown. I mean, if you look at, I think there's 3 different neighborhoods outside of downtown now where the average housing price is increased by like 70 to 100%, depending on where you're living. And so we're seeing that influx of people going back into and redeveloping those houses that, maybe were dilapidated at one point. And so I think that's a positive sign for our community. But when it comes to workforce housing, I would love for you to point out an area across the country that is not experiencing this issue. As John mentioned, housing prices across the country right now are just continuing to skyrocket. They're not really letting up. El Paso is blessed to not have that same issue to the same degree as places like Washington, D.C., where I'm hearing from people that they're bidding $200,000 over the asking price and they're still not getting houses. That's simply not happening here. We're seeing some increase in costs, most certainly, but we're not hearing about people, having to bid $250,000 over the asking price and not receiving that offer. So I think there's a lot to be grateful here. And, certainly there are some opportunities where, we need to start taking stock now in what's happening in our region. I know I can tell you that Fort Bliss is going to continue to grow. There's about 1,800 or so houses that we're short for the growing military population. A lot of that population is looking at going into Horizon City and places that are, in the county. And so there's things that we can do to not only encourage infill, but also make sure that there is available housing stock so that we're not missing those investment opportunities.
Very briefly. So I just want to mention, I'm going to tie these 2 questions to the first one because at the end of the day, I think that both are tied to wages. And wages are associated to productivity, right? And I think that we, at the local level, we are doing a great job in terms of bringing advanced manufacturing industries through the BBBR challenge and through other initiatives which have higher wages. So that's what we are doing. And I think that that will help have affordable housing and other affordable things for our region.
We are going to leave it at that because we are at time. Please join me in thanking this wonderful panel for everything they offered to us today. Thank you so much.